Hello and welcome. It's a real privilege to be speaking to Gaelle Pantin today from Angers. She's a professor in marketing, and I came across her brilliant work on light and color while I was searching to find out why we should care about color rendering and color in light. And she's kindly agreed to speak to us today a little bit more about how color affects particularly our experience of food, because that's her specialism. And so I'm going to begin perhaps, Gaelle, by just asking you briefly to introduce yourself and your research. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how color affects food. And then you're going to share some things about that we can do or notice about light and color perception. So first, Gaelle, can you just briefly introduce your research and what you do?
Thank you, Shelley, for the invitation. With pleasure. So I am Gaelle Sohier. I am professor of marketing at IAE Angers, at the University of Angers, and I focus my scientific activities on food marketing. My research is mainly dedicated to the acceptability of innovation in the food sector and to the influence of sensory stimuli on consumer behavior. So, for example, I work on the influence of product colors and shape on brand personality perception and test evaluation. And finally, my research deals also with consumer acceptability of food innovation as insect consumption, so it's in the way, and how we can develop managerial action for this new diet proposition.
Mm, wow. Okay. I hadn't thought we'd be talking about insects, but that's fascinating. Thank you so much. So I'm just, if you could just gonna go back to basics, which is that I understand that our color perception really evolved so that we could make choices about food, ripeness and sweetness when we were foraging in the environment. But obviously now most of us forage in a supermarket or in the cupboard or the fridge at home. So tell us how color is affecting our experience of things like ripeness or sweetness or freshness or acceptability. What's color doing for us, and how does that work?
Okay. In the food context, color plays a central role in the creation of consumer attitudes, and due to its impact on the edibility of the food and the anticipated taste experience, even if we don't pay any attention to it. This is a new research about the importance of sensory marketing and embodied cognition, and that's it's the idea that we perceive the world through our senses, and that our bodily sensations affect the decision we make without our conscious awareness. So that's why we don't pay any attention to food, to color of food, but it's very important in our decision. So color could be predominant in the perception and the choice of product because consumers have established close association in their mind with specific colors because they occur in their shopping environment. For example, individuals have learned that the red objects require attention. That's the case for red lights, for example, and for stop sign and discount levels. And by this way, and by referring to such association, consumers tend to infer meaning from a product colors. So that's the way they do in order to infer some meaning about colors. But they don't pay any attention to it effectively, but they can use this color to infer some other meaning in the food sector, for example.
So
And yeah.
so for example, if an apple is red, we assume it, or products that are red, presumably we associate them with sweetness. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, that's the case. And if it's green, it could be more acid, for example.
Okay, okay. So we can use those very simple sort of traffic light kind
Yeah.
of colors
Mhm.
to guide our choices around food. So are we finding that it sounds as though it's possible to manipulate the color of food to create an experience of sweetness or of bitterness or of freshness, even if the product itself isn't? You can manipulate that. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, that's right.
Hmm. So we need to be careful, I guess, about that. So is it possible? I know that there are some foods, for example, which are blue or kind of counterintuitive. How does that work?
They create more the surprise in this case. It could be possible to use other colors, which are not congruent with the expectation of the customers. And in this case, you can create surprise for the customer, and most of the time they like it, because there's an incongruence. They perceive an incongruence between the taste and the color, and they can be attracted by this incongruence.
Oh, that's really interesting. So I know that children, for example, really struggle to eat greens, and I just wonder if there is a way that should we create red cabbage or red foods which would give them a feeling that it's going to be tasty. Would that
Yeah,
be?
it's a good solution in order to make children eating some vegetables, for example. We can change the colors in order to find a way to make them eating this kind of product of food that they don't like most of the time.
So when we're very small, presumably, are there some associations with color and taste that are, in a sense, hardwired, or how much can you learn about these things?
I think that we learn from the beginning about these associations between some colors and some taste expectation, for example. And some researchers show that we did it in the past in order to recognize what is good for the health and what is not. So it's I think you learn from the very past period, and this is this influence that we have now.
Okay, because um, a lot of baby food is sort of brown, so presumably, if you were to give them stronger colors very early on, their brains would you'd start to make that association. Is that?
Yes. They did it at an early age. Yes.
Okay. And so I also understand that babies' color vision is evolving over time. So at the beginning, they notice bright colors. Is that correct? And
Yes. That's why we have to use more saturated colors for babies, because they can show them in a better way. Yeah.
so you can use color. You can make a color something brighter and make it look more saturated and give a heightened experience of taste just by changing the color.
Yes. We need to take into account these three-dimensional characters of the colors as hue, saturation, brightness, for example, because these signals make a big difference to how we perceive food. So it's really important to do it. In our research that we did with some colleagues, we show that the three-dimensional characters of colors plays an important role in children gustatory inferences, such as perceived acidity, fruitiness of the product. So that's why it's very important to take these three dimensions of colors, because past research took only into account the color is blue or red or green, but now we have to take into account if it's bright blue or saturated blue, for example, because in terms of light, the more saturated color, brighter color is in comparison to its surrounding, for example, the more it is visually silent. So we can be very different from your competitors if you use other colors which are in the same hue, but not with the same saturation and the same brightness.
So for those of us who aren't color specialists, so for example, let's take a color red, because that's the kind of one of the main food signaling colors. So would you say so pink is an unsaturated red, is that right? And then you can
Yes,
go
yes, that's it.
and then there's a saturation which is sort of from pink into a deep red, and
Yes.
then there is the brightness. So tell me, what's the difference between that saturation and brightness?
The brightness is related to that you say, because pink could be considered as bright, for example, and you have a deep red, and here you can compare them and say that the pink one could be less fruity than the deep one, and when it is saturated, that means that the main color is really could be really seen by consumers. So you don't have any gray in the color.
I see. Okay. So you could have a bright pink. You could have a bright pink or a very knocked back pink, sort of what's the opposite to bright then? A very low saturation pink, is that right?
Yeah, low saturation. You can use the pale term.
Oh, okay. Thank
That
you.
is also the opposite of saturated.
Fantastic. Sorry, I realized that the vocabulary for color is in the same way the vocabulary for light is not always mine is not always as sophisticated as a specialist like you. So
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated. Yes, because we
yeah,
use very few words for the same thing, so it's not very easy.
yeah. So we can create the experience of something seeming very sort of saturated, a full color, that will give us an experience or an expectation of that it's going to taste a particular. It's going to be a much denser, much sort of more brighter, intense taste. Is that correct? Have I got that right?
Yeah, yes. That's the case for product with chocolate, for example. If you can put some brown, deep brown on the package, your taste expectation is that the chocolate is very present in the product, and that there is a lot of chocolate in the product, and that's um, that we do with for children, because when you have some cereals, for example, with chocolate, we can put a lot of brown colors on the package in order to induce this kind of taste for the kids, and
Ah,
it works most of the time.
so, but I guess it would be possible to make a very deep brown package and to try and reduce the amount of chocolate so that they don't have quite so much sugar in their breakfast. Is that so you can manipulate that? Is that correct?
Yeah. We can use the term of manipulation. We can do that with color, but we can use it in a good way as well. If we want to transfer some meanings about healthiness, so we can use color as well.
Okay. So what would be an example of using color to create an experience of healthiness?
That we have two results, because we have some contradictory results for kids and for adults. So it's a little bit interesting about that, because according to brand strategy managers, bright colors greatly help to attract children and encourage them to choose healthier foods. So that's the main results for kids. And for adults, it's not the same, because we show that light colors package evoke two opposing effects. The first one is that they stimulate favorable health impressions, so it's good for health, but they activate detrimental taste inferences. So for a brand manager, it's not easy to use color, because in the first way, you can create more a product which is more healthy, which is healthier, but on the other way, the product has not a very good taste. So we need to investigate deeply these three dimensions of color in order to know how we can induce an healthier product and a product which is tasty as well.
Hmm. So pale sounds like it's a bit not very, not so tasty, not so delicious.
Yeah.
Interesting. How interesting. And I'm just thinking that particularly with pale colored packaging, that the lighting context makes a difference also. So if you have a white under a warm white or under a cool white, perhaps the difference is clearer. If you're thinking about somebody who is designing a space for people to enjoy food, um, is there anything particular that you would like to suggest in terms of your understanding of color and how that might affect our experience of food?
Yeah. It depends of the target, because when we are working with kids, we know that we have to use saturated color. They really like that. But for adults, it's not the same things. It depends of the categories of the products of the company. If you want to be in an environment which is very calm, you have to use bright colors that are more blue or green. But if you want to be in an environment which is more creative, you have to use more red colors and violet, for example, because these colors can induce this kind of meanings and this kinds of behavior for your customer. So it depends on the context.
Okay, so does it also depend on the type of person, the personality, whether they are somebody who likes adventure or who really hates taking risk?
Yes, yes, yes. They're not really about the risk that they want to take, but more about their personality traits. If they are more extrovert or introvert, it has a lot of influence on how you can consider the colors around you.
Hmm. So what, for example, if you're an introvert, what kinds of colors, if you're designing a space and colors and packaging, particularly for food, for an introvert, what sorts of tones would you choose?
Most of the time, introvert person prefer the color as green or blue, which are not so catchy for them. So, and for extrovert people, that the reverse. They prefer deep red and deep violet colors, or yellow, which are more warm colors.
How interesting. And what about with different ages? Because I know that the way that the visual system processes, because the way that our eyes change over time. So for an adult, for a child or an adult, does that make a big difference, or a very old person?
No, I don't think so because research doesn't show a lot of differences between in the age of adults. If you are young, you are 20 or older, there are not a lot of difference. But what we can see that we sometimes we have to propose more saturated colors to older people in order that they could see in a better way the colors of the product or the packaging of the product.
Okay. So an extroverted older person needs bright, warm colors, and an introverted older person needs sort of calmer
Yeah,
colors.
that we can see in the research. Yeah.
Okay. And what about the relationship with the idea of natural? So I know there's a lot to talk about something called biophilic design, which is an idea about design and colors being close to nature. Have you found any thoughts about that in your work about color?
About the relationship between colors and the natural aspect of design.
Yes.
That the question, yeah, yeah. What is very tendency right now that is to use green colors, but we have some problems with green colors because there are some greenwashing. Because you know that we can use green colors in order to induce more ecological product or more natural product, and for some products it's not right. So there are some misleading information with the use of green colors. So that's why it's a little bit difficult. We have to know if the brand is legitimate to use this kind of color because they have real values for environment of ecology. But if you want to induce natures and natural product, we have to use the wood, the color of wood, and green. So it works very well, even if you are not very artificial. Even if you are not a very natural brown or natural product.
Okay. So we need to be aware, or
Yes.
be careful when we get colors, we get brands which use green and use that natural aesthetic,
Mhm.
because that may not be completely true, but it sounds as though there is a very deep response to that, a kind of a search for the natural. That's really interesting. So if we were talking in 10 years time, what would you like to find? What would be your recommendation? Is there something that you can think that we should be looking for?
Yes, I try to work on this association between a natural product and the color that we can use, and how we can say to the consumer that the product is a real natural product with words, with colors, and to make a mix in order to give to consumer the good information. So that's the way that I choose, because I want to use sensory marketing in order to give the best information and the right information to the customer. So it's that's a kind of social marketing in order to use the techniques of sensory marketing, not to make people choose without thinking about their decision making, but I want to walk in this way in order to use colors and to find a way to use color to say the real things and the true things to the customers.
Mm, that's a really good aim. I guess it's to use the marketing tools for good and not to manipulate in a bad way. That's something that I guess we can all be really look forward to seeing how you're going to do that, because we all hope to do that. I think these decisions are so complicated that if you can, as a marketing professional, use color and light to help us to make better decisions, then it's fantastic. So thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing that. Is there anywhere that we can look out for your work and things that we can search for?
Yes, you can go to on the website of my university on of my web page. So it's very easy to find my work on it, and to the ORCID page as well.
Okay, we'll add that to the notes at the end of this page. So anything else you'd like to add? Anything else you'd like us to know?
No, I think that what is very important now, and you say that in conclusion that we have to beat against misleading information. It's not that because we are in marketing that I think no, we have to use marketing tools in order to make people aware about the if the food is good or not, and if there are good things in the product that they will eat or not. So as a marketer, I would like to walk in this way, because I think we need to find another way to speak with people and to make people choose their brand in a good way. And I think that new consumer are looking for these values now.
I agree with that. Thank you so much, Gaelle. That was fascinating. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.